Coming up on this episode, guest host Julie Dumalet from the Office of Pro-Life Activities speaks with Dr. Martin McCaffrey and Monica Rivera about a new ministry that offers care and pastoral support for families following a prenatal diagnosis. Welcome to Around the Archdiocese.
Sharing information, insights, and stories about our Catholic faith from across the Archdiocese of Galveston-Houston, you're listening to Around the Archdiocese.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Around the Archdiocese. I'm Julie Dumalet, Director of the Office of Pro-Life Activities. On this episode, I'm standing in for Sean O'Driscoll to speak with our guests about issues of prenatal diagnosis, pastoral care to families and children after diagnosis, and a new ministry in the Archdiocese, which seeks to improve support available to families following a medical diagnosis during pregnancy. Today, I'm excited to welcome our guests, Dr. Marty McCaffrey, Professor of Pediatrics at UNC Chapel Hill, a neonatologist, and board member of Be Not Afraid, a national Catholic apostolate supporting families after prenatal diagnosis, and Ms. Monica Rivera, frequent archdiocesan speaker on topics of supporting children with disabilities, a volunteer with the Archdiocesan Be Not Afraid ministry, and mother to 9-year-old Omar. Welcome to you both.
Thanks, Julie.
Thank you, Julie.
So, Dr. McCaffrey, today we're going to talk about Be Not Afraid, which is a national Catholic apostolate and a new ministry in the Archdiocese. You're a board member with Be Not Afraid, so tell us a little about that organization.
Yes, ma'am. Well, Be Not Afraid, I have a pretty long history with Be Not Afraid. It probably goes back about 15 years now when I first met the patient care managers for Be Not Afraid in my own unit when they came to see a family. It was a family with conjoined twins. And we had communicated a little bit beforehand, but I met the then director, Tracy Windsor, in my unit when she came in to help minister to the family that was dealing with the challenges with their babies, with Allie and Addie. And it was an amazing experience for me. And it led me to look into Be Not Afraid and think about working more closely with them, especially after Tracy, who you cannot refuse, invited me to become a more permanent member of their organization and the work that they were doing. And my work with Be Not Afraid probably was triggered earlier than that, though. We have a child with Down syndrome.
Okay.
Shay's 25 years old now. But when she was born, I think it really started my recognition of the challenges that we have in medicine in dealing with disability and diagnoses of disability, and increasingly over the last several decades, prenatal diagnosis of disability, and what our view is of individuals. And I found it was really coming into conflict with my own personal religious Catholic view of the world, as the secular view really had started to take over medicine. Be Not Afraid became a great outlet for me to try and support families dealing with these challenges. And what Be Not Afraid does is it partners with parents who are dealing with a difficult prenatal diagnosis, who want to at least try and get to a delivery and hopefully beyond, and hopefully have a life for their baby. And that can be very challenging when you have a prenatal diagnosis. When a prenatal diagnosis, certainly for some things, and we all know about Down syndrome and the risks for high risk for abortion for those babies, but also for trisomy 13, for trisomy 18, for a host of other things we're screening for now prenatally. The reflex reaction of many physicians or providers is to offer abortion. And we are doing so much prenatal testing now that every woman who is pregnant is going to be offered prenatal testing and diagnosis and genetic screening. And it will be up to them whether they take it or not. But that's a huge number of women nationally across the country that are dealing with the challenges of this screening process. What BNA does is it identifies these folks when hopefully they get diagnosed with a prenatal diagnosis. And that for many women, for all women, for parents, is really the trauma point that begins a really difficult and challenging journey.
Sure.
If there's a prenatal diagnosis. That day, your pregnancy gets stood on its head, the world falls apart, and even if we as doctors are doing everything perfectly, the world is radically different for you. And then you might go out on the internet and read about some of these disorders and just read very gloomy, dark things about lethality, inability to survive. And you need support at that point.
Yes.
And it needs to be a very concerted effort to try and support families walking that walk. Because the day of the trauma, when you get a diagnosis, is just the beginning. You then have to deal with the prenatal course, trying to manage and navigate through the waterways that are really pretty hazardous to try and get to a term delivery, and convincing physicians and other providers that this is the right thing to do. There are many good providers out there, but there are many who still don't recognize the value of some of these lives with a prenatal diagnosis. And then after a birth, how do we deal with things afterwards?
Sure. So thank you for that. So you had mentioned that a secular view had kind of taken over medicine, and tell us a little what you mean about that in terms of the view of the human person, or in some other way.
Yeah, so I think that happened way before my time, actually. I think that battle started and was lost back in the 60s and 70s.
Okay.
That I call the bioethical revolution. And so what happened during those periods, 60s, 70s, into the early 80s, is we moved from a culture in medicine that valued life and was really very focused on the sanctity of life. And we moved into a culture that was focused on quality of life. And the things that started developing over that time were foundational principles, which might be great if they were founded in the sanctity of life, but they are not. They are founded right now in the shifting sands of quality of life. And that is something that is in the eye of the beholder. And these principles right now are beneficence, non-malfeasance, justice, and autonomy. And those principles in and of themselves might be good if you're dealing with the principle that life is ultimately sacred. But otherwise, those principles can be used to justify pretty much anything you ever want to do. Even some really horrible things. And because quality of life then is all in the eye of the beholder. And whether you're doing good for the greater good, for the community, the utilitarianism that has crept into medicine over the last 50, 60, 70 years is really turned medicine on its head a bit, and really has everything to do with how we view these beautiful lives of kids who are prenatally diagnosed, and how we potentially may not think that they are necessarily worthy of life.
And I think, as you mentioned, utilitarianism too, this is really a problem that our culture sees in general, whether we're talking about young children, children in the womb, whether we're talking about the elderly, maybe someone with a brain injury. I think those utilitarian considerations are really coming in across the board.
Yeah, I think that has become an overarching theme in a lot of fronts in the war on life, all of which you just nailed, Julie. I mean, I think we are pretty well engaged, certainly as a Catholic community, I think in a number of those fronts. The prenatal diagnosis front, we have not even taken the field yet.
Yes.
And it needs to be discussed and talked about. And I think as physicians, as people who are humans, I mean, we should at least be able to look at the weakest of us and realize that one day we are going to be dependent. I mean, Aquinas, back to Aristotle, and then forward to people like Alistair McIntyre have all talked about this acknowledged dependence that we all live with. It's unavoidable. And if to deny it makes you less human. But as Catholics, I think what we need to really be looking at is these individuals, individuals, humans are not defined by someone's belief in their ability to reason. That is not how we should judge whether a life is worth living. as Catholics, for sure, we all should be looking at our brothers and sisters as created in the image of God. And so that should ultimately be what drives us in caring for these individuals, for these babies, or the other people that you're talking about in more vulnerable stages of life.
Absolutely. Well, and I think we all culturally look at becoming dependent as this is something to be feared. This is almost something shameful. And the reality is, so that's our secular view. But of course, the reality is we're made for community. We're made to care for each other. And whether we're the one doing the caring at any given time or whether someone is caring for us, that's how we're called to be in the world. And we've become so individualistic that we forget that it's okay. It's a good thing to rely on each other that way.
Well, one of the new pillars I mentioned of the 4 pillars of current medical ethical thinking, the tyranny of ethics, is autonomy. Mm-hmm. And we are people who want to be autonomous. We don't want to be heteronymous. We don't want other people telling us what to do. And I've heard Bishop Barron has spoken about this really eloquently, I think. He says,
does he ever not speak eloquently?
No, he doesn't. But what we really should be thinking about is, can we be theonomous and think about a higher authority than ourselves?
There you go.
And be searching and developing the systems of love that will truly make us free and ultimately be able to enjoy, the community that you talk about. But we love our autonomy. And we see the results all around us in a lot of ways.
That we do. That you do. We do. Well, thank you for that. So, Monica, you have volunteered with the Archdiocese for a few years supporting parents who themselves have received a prenatal diagnosis. How did you get involved with the ministry?
Well, I have a son who has a diagnosis, which we did receive prenatally.
Okay, and tell us about that.
So Omar is 9,
Yes.
but about when I was 11 weeks pregnant, that was the day, not necessarily of the diagnosis, but when there was a shift.
I see.
So they found something on the ultrasound that pointed to, possible heart defects. And from that just began, all the chaos.
Okay.
We started going to the maternal fetal medicine doctor, endless appointments and ultrasounds. And of course, a lot of the time, the question of prenatal testing came up. I initially, even before we knew anything was going on, I didn't want any testing. It didn't matter.
Okay.
And so when there were signs that something was abnormal, then I did want to, get more information.
Sure.
It wasn't going to change what we were going to do. We were still going to carry Omar to term, but I wanted to know.
Be able to prepare.
Yeah,
a
exactly.
little bit, right.
So, we did the NIPT test, and that showed that there was a positive predictive value of 50%. Which, was, I didn't quite understand. It was not explained to me in a manner that I could understand.
Sure. And just for those that may not know, what is an NIPT test? And this can be for either of you.
Go for it.
Well, non-invasive prenatal testing.
Okay.
So the blood tests now that we can do on moms looking for baby DNA in moms.
I see. Okay.
So very simple, easy, and it's not directly going to things like amnio or lots of ultrasounds.
I see. Okay.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And you talked about PPV or positive predictive value, and that would be.
You didn't have. I mean, this.
You didn't really have.
You bring up a huge point, Monica, because PPV is really the critical thing that people need to understand.
Okay.
About NIPT.
All
Lots
right.
of acronyms here.
Yes.
But so PPV is positive predictive value. What many people will tell you who are not clinical, but unfortunately, many clinical people will tell you as well. These tests are so accurate. They're 98, 99% sensitive and specific.
Okay.
That means nothing for a woman who's getting back a positive test as to whether it's real or not.
I see.
Positive predictive value factors in what the occurrence is truly of a real positive in that population.
Okay.
So how old were you, Monica, at the time when you had
34.
Yeah. So you were a little bit on the younger side. So when you're younger, these tests are not nearly as accurate. So the positive predictive value, meaning is my test that I got back from my doctor a real positive or not, is much less when you're younger.
Mm-hmm.
If you're 40 or 45, the positive predictive value can be higher.
I see.
So for Down syndrome, the PPV, positive predictive value, for a 40-year-old mom will get up towards 90%.
Okay.
It's never 100%. For a 20-year-old mom for Down syndrome, it'll be down around 25 or 30%. For trisomy 13 and 18, which are the other two big chromosomal tests, genetic disorders that we're looking at generally, those numbers for younger moms are much lower even depending on the test. It may even be in the single digits, the positive predictive value.
Okay.
So you have to think about what that means. Monica had a 50% PPV. That is flipping a coin.
Mm-hmm.
So her doctor could have come in and said, I don't know, maybe you got trisomy 18, maybe not. Let's flip a coin. It would have been the same accuracy as that test.
Sure.
So the tests have some real problems with them in terms of what they do. And that's why they're called screening tests.
The information
they
that
are
they
not
actually give us.
diagnostic tests.
Okay.
But the worry I think a lot of us have is a mom who may get a screening test, comes back positive. She doesn't know what all the numbers mean.
Of course.
And she's abortion prone. She goes off to get an abortion and never pursues getting an amnio or CVA. Well, probably an amnio at that point.
Other kind of testing.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you for that. That helps clarify some of those acronyms, as you said. Any specialty is acronym soup a little bit, but thank you for clarifying that for the listener. So, Monica, you were sharing about all these tests and all these numbers that are being thrown at you, and not really you and your family not really being given a good understanding and explanation of what does all this mean. So what's going through your head at that point?
Oh my goodness. Just so much uncertainty because nobody could tell me if my son was going to live or not.
Yes.
And I remember the maternal fetal medicine doctor, she said, I really suggest that you get an amnio so we know what could have possibly happened. And they scheduled it, and they told me, go ahead and schedule it. If you change your mind, we'll cancel it. We did that twice, and both times I canceled it. And then my husband and I just started talking, and, we were just thinking, we really need to prepare. We need to know what's going to happen.
Right.
Which, in hindsight, you really can never know.
Absolutely.
What's going to happen. But
absolutely.
Yeah, but we went ahead and did the amnio. And so we got the confirmation of trisomy 13.
Okay.
And that was devastating. But I think it also gave me time, or us time to, plan what we wanted the rest of the pregnancy to look like, what we wanted the birth to look like. And I feel like we were able to do a lot of special things.
Good.
We had a blessing for Omar. We didn't have a baby shower.
Yeah.
And we were able to get a photographer at birth. We did a maternity photo session, and we had the same photographer that was there at the birth too. It was I lay me down to sleep, so they had a really good understanding of the situation.
Of what was needed there. Yeah.
But it was a lot for me. I think I just kind of shut down. I didn't want to talk to anybody.
Of course.
I was really lost. Eventually I came around and was starting to talk to, other people. I have worked as a social worker in the medical field.
Yes.
So I reached out to some of the doctors, and they really gave me some encouragement because they had, they have treated, babies and
children
kids with trisomy
13. Yes.
Yeah. And one of the things that happened was I told my OB, I said, I used to work with a family, and they had a child with trisomy 13, and she just questioned it. She said, "Are you sure? I really don't think that's the case."
Okay.
And I said, "No, yes, I really remember this child." And, just once you have a diagnosis, so many things change.
There's a lot of assumptions, I feel like, that are made from the medical community about there's any kind of certainty about what that's going to look like.
Right.
And so when Omar was born, and Omar is 9 now.
Yes, he is.
But almost 10.
Almost 10 in January.
Happy early birthday to Omar. But what kind of advice or prognosis were you guys given from your medical team once that diagnosis was confirmed, let's say, through amnio?
So I think there's two sides. From the OB side,
okay,
I, was given relatively no hope.
Okay.
So I was being treated at a certain hospital. And the plan initially, just before we knew anything, was to deliver at this hospital.
Okay.
They don't have a level 4 NICU, and the plan was just to offer comfort care.
I see. Okay.
And also during the labor and delivery, they were not going to monitor him.
Okay.
And they were not going to give me a C-section unless I needed it, but not for Omar if he were in distress.
Sure.
So that was the OB side, prenatally. And once he was born, there's a whole other team, the NICU team, the palliative care team. And so during my pregnancy, I did meet with the NICU team and the palliative care team at a different hospital that does have a level 4 NICU.
Okay.
And basically they told us, we will do whatever you and your husband wishes are.
Okay.
So that gave me a very big sense of relief.
Sure.
And, we just said, we just have to get him to birth.
Yeah.
And so we did.
Yeah.
They still didn't monitor him during the delivery. And as, moments before he was born, the whole NICU team was there. They were ready to assist. They put him on me, and he was purple, but he was still warm. And, the team quickly took him and assisted him. And moments later, he let out the faintest of cries, but it was a cry. And, I could finally breathe. And the rest, the NICU team was awesome.
Wonderful. Wonderful. So, Dr. McCaffrey, as you're hearing Monica's story and we're listening, and thank you, Monica, for sharing that. I know it's really emotional, of course. What do you see oftentimes with families that want supportive care provided? And is there any pushback? Am I making sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, let me tag team onto one of
Absolutely.
Monica's stories, though.
Yeah.
So she talked about that you knew somebody with had a child with trisomy 13 who had survived. And so my story is that in 2009, I went with Shay, my daughter with Down syndrome, up to a press conference in D.C., and it was being held to talk about impact of Affordable Care Act on families with kids with special needs. So I was going up there to talk. And we went up there, and it was just an epiphany. I don't know what else to call it, because it changed my life forever. Because there at that press conference were a number of families with children with and adults with trisomy 18 and trisomy 13. And I did the exact same thing you just described. I met all of these people, and they were wonderful. And some of them had their children with them. A lot of them didn't, because they're hard to travel with. And I said, you guys, are you sure you're really all full trisomies? You're not mosaics? I met this one woman in particular. Her name is Barb Farlow. Barb's daughter, Annie, died up in Canada at 3 months of age with trisomy 13. And it's a long story and a difficult story. But Barb had become a huge advocate for families with trisomy disorders, trying to fight for them up in Canada. And she looked at me and she said, "Marty, you just don't know the literature, do you?" I'm like, "Really?" I said, "Well, I know what I read in the textbooks." She said, "The textbooks are wrong. The textbooks, what you're reading in the major textbooks is based on inadequate literature. I advise you to go home and look up the real literature on survivals for kids with trisomy 13 and 18. So this is 2009. So Barb and I became fast friends, and
Yeah.
Before I really was with Be Not Afraid, Barb and I started working on a lot of cases trying to help people. But so I went home and I looked at the literature, and she was right. I mean, there was an article from 1994 with families from SOFT being surveyed, the support organization for trisomy.
Okay.
And it was published in pediatrics. And it showed survivals for kids with trisomy 13, 18 of 40 to 45% at a year.
Sure.
Hardly lethal, life-limiting sort of, maybe you could say life-limiting. But this is an era when nobody was talking about heart surgeries or airway support or tracheostomy, things that we now are starting to do more for these children. And I was just blown away. I mean, that I never knew this. And honestly, right now, I mean, that was 2009. So if, in July of 2009, I would have been telling a family with a trisomy 13 diagnosis, I'm so sorry. Comfort care is all we can really offer you, and your baby's not going to survive. And it became clear to me as I really reviewed the literature that wasn't the case even back then. And then over time now, it's become more and more clear that more and more of these babies could survive if we were willing to treat their medical conditions and not treat their genetic chromosome number.
Right.
So, I mean, we're seeing places now reporting survivals at a year of 50, 60, 70% for these children. And if you get to a year and you're alive with trisomy 13 or 18, you've probably taken care of a lot of the airway and heart issues already. So your survival is pretty long. You don't lose too many. I mean, so it's not unusual that we're hearing now about kids like Omar that are 9, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30 years old. I mean, they're not kids anymore, obviously, but with trisomy conditions. So, but it still remains that there's tremendous bias in the medical world towards these diagnoses. And there's maybe a lot of different reasons why that is. It is pretty clear now it's less about the care being futile. We could keep these children alive.
Sure.
And maybe there's some things that parents don't necessarily want to do in terms of surgeries or things for their kids if they're pretty extreme. But honestly, a lot of the surgeries that they might need are surgeries we do commonly on other kids with normal chromosomes.
Right.
And so it's become clear now it's less about the care being futile. It's more about physicians and providers judging the life as futile.
So that quality of life issue that you were talking about before. Yeah. Okay. And is a solution how we train our physicians?
Yeah, I mean, that's a part of it. I think, we need to do a better job of trying to get into medical schools and nursing schools and respiratory therapy schools and start talking to these people. It's a little bit of a challenge, though, trying to break into some of these genetic curriculums with this type of information.
Because you are yourself a professor of pediatrics.
Right.
So you have an in with some people.
I might have an in, but there are other people. There's still tremendous bias, I think.
Yes.
And but the fact is, this genetic testing, people, the lay people don't understand it. The people who are getting the blood from the moms and getting the test results back often don't understand it.
Right.
They don't understand sensitivity and specificity. And some of them really are feeling pressure, I think, because they feel abortion is a right for women. It's reproductive choice. And so in states where there are limits on abortion, many of us suspect, and the literature kind of supports, that physicians are using these screening tests to send women off to abortion because they won't have time to get an amnio or get the CVS result back and beat the deadline for the abortion. So, if you've got, 6 weeks, you're not going to be able to make that at all. But I mean, if you have 12 weeks, like we do in North Carolina, some people might be pushing that. That could happen.
Right.
I don't know of cases, but that is in the literature and talked about.
Of course. Right. I just lost my train of thought. So give me just a moment. We can cut this in just a second. Yeah. 30 around
You're so good.
31 minutes. Look at you.
Make somebody's job easier.
I'm not into making Sean's job easier. And yes, I said that on recording.
He'll enjoy that.
Where was I going to go next? Shoot, that's really annoying.
Genetic testing, abortion deadlines.
Yeah. It's just gone.
Yeah.
So Dr. McCaffrey, parents that are receiving prenatal diagnoses, especially for some of the trisomies, in this day and age, despite what you just talked about the numbers being much more favorable than previously believed in terms of survivability and long-term prognosis. Even in this day and age, what are parents likely to hear from a medical team?
Yeah, well, I think, Monica talked about it. I think we at BNA, at Be Not Afraid, or, I spend a lot of time on Facebook trying to find folks who need help, who are out there sort of don't know where to turn. They could use some, a little bit of transparency from the medical side. I think a lot of people are still hearing things that are lethal, or even if it's cloaked in kind of the softer language of life limiting, what they're basically being told is, some of these conditions are not survivable. And it can be right from the point of getting a screening test, an NIPT. The other thing that seems to, I don't know, this is my perception, but I think what I've been seeing more of is once that screening test comes back positive, when people are doing ultrasounds, it seems to me they start finding things that maybe weren't there before.
I see.
I would just throw this out there, because Monica's working with these folks too, is a lot of reports of hypoplastic left heart, where that's like, if you're a neonatologist or if you're a cardiologist, it's one of the heart defects that kind of strikes fear into you, because if it's real, it's multiple surgeries to try and get a baby to survive, and they're going to only survive with a single ventricle. They won't have two pumping chambers. So when you start throwing out hypoplastic left heart, that alone for some people will put them to the point where they talk about either aborting their baby or just doing comfort care.
Sure.
Never mind if it's in conjunction with a screening test for trisomy 13 or 18, and then you start seeing other things. What I see also happening is people will start calling out all the soft signs for families, and that's really impressive to them. When they hear, the feet are clubbed and the hands are clenched and the cerebellum is small. These are all things that are very common in trisomy 13 and 18, but they're nothing that need anything to be done surgically, and they're nothing that affects survival. Okay. But if you're a parent and you hear a part of the brain is just like really, and depending how it's portrayed,
right,
that is really overpowering. I've got a couple of people I'm working with now who, that to them is sticking in their brains. Oh my gosh, the cerebellum is small. I'm like, I have to reassure you that that's not really the major issue here. There's other things going on.
Right.
But now, the flip side is there are more people that are getting better. Monica's experience in the NICU is a great one.
Yes.
With a good team. There are still NICUs that would not be that supportive. I think in our place, we have worked, at UNC over the last 10 years really very hard to make our place on the OB and the neonatal side one that's very welcoming to families who really are determined to do everything they can for their trisomy 13 or trisomy 18 child.
Yeah.
But there's still a lot of places that are not there.
Sure.
And at this point, the data just doesn't support that. So I think that's where BNA comes in.
Absolutely.
Because parents need a place to go where they can get some good information. So I can supply the medical information, but what parents definitely need from the time of diagnosis and trauma is what Monica's talking about.
Right.
You get hit with that diagnosis and you're devastated. Your world's turned upside down. You've got doctors telling you that your baby won't survive. There's nothing we can do. And you feel powerless. and you just sink into this hole and you don't want to contact with anybody. And you need someone experienced in trauma-informed care,
Yes.
in supportive care, who understands what trisomy conditions especially are about. Although we deal with every prenatal diagnosis and be not afraid.
Sure.
But those are the biggies. And so, I mean, B&A has an important role, even though I think things are getting somewhat better for sure. It's just not fast enough for me.
Right, of course. Of course.
Exactly.
And when it's your family, nothing's fast enough. Right. So, Monica, you're in the process of training to be a B&A parent advocate. Do I have that term right?
A patient care coordinator. Parent care coordinator. I kind of think patient and parent, but
parent care coordinator.
Yeah.
So
PCC.
What is, based on your experience, what did you need to hear? What would you have wanted to hear, both from your care team and maybe from family and friends, when you received your diagnosis?
I think from the care team, just in general, more support.
Okay.
You know, after the diagnosis, I remember bringing journal articles to my OB.
Okay.
And, you know, I don't even think she looked at them or was really, you know, interested. I think, you know, at her hospital, the neonatologist already had his mind up.
He had decided already. Okay.
And so there wasn't very much, you know, support from that end. You know, and just going into your delivery and not knowing what state your baby is in. Is traumatic in itself.
And I suppose you're never entirely going to know with a diagnosis, but it sounds to me like you really could have used some hope.
Exactly.
From that team.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And as far as family and friends, I think for family and friends, it's really hard. You know, they don't know what to say. People don't know what to say.
No, they don't.
And, you know, I think many people did their best and it was very well appreciated. And, you know, it did help. But, you know, at times, you know, we did get comments like, oh, you know, nothing's wrong. Everything will be fine. You know, we're going to pray that your baby, you know, doesn't have this.
Sure.
But, you know, I think he was made in God's image.
Absolutely.
And he is exactly the way he's supposed to be.
Well, for those of us that have met Omar, he's absolutely made in God's image. He's such a sweetheart.
Can I just talk about
absolutely
things that, well, I won't say they're all my ideas, but things that have been written about, talked about, really from a number of neonatologists who are really determined to help this community.
Yes.
People like Annie Janvier up in Canada and some other folks. And Barb Farlow, actually, who's the author on a lot of journal articles now dealing with families with trisomy 13 and 18. But I think, you know, one of the things, well, several things, families, moms especially, or parents getting hit repeatedly, being told how terrible, you know, their trisomy condition is. I mean, over and over, especially if you sort of give people the sense that you want care for your baby after birth. Not recognizing the name of the baby, talking about the baby as a person.
That's great.
Yeah. I mean, talking about the terrible impacts. If you do go through with this, you know what it's going to do to your family. I mean, that is regularly discussed by family members. And that's something that should really be just horribly discouraged. Because there's no evidence to support that, actually.
And what would you say to what we often hear is, well, your baby's just going to suffer so much, and this is compassionate either to terminate or to provide only
there's the
comfort
compassion
care.
thing. So that's part of, well, I'll jump back to the Georgetown mantra, you know, throw in with autonomy, beneficence, non-malfeasance, and justice. Wrap around that compassion. And compassion kind of goes, I think, with quality of life because it's all emotion. It's not based really on any data or reality, and it's certainly not based in the perception that, someone like Omar is here and he's perfectly made. He is just what he's supposed to be.
Yes.
And God thought the world was incomplete without him. And he is here, and he's someone that we just need to realize may need some extra help from us, but he's no less important than any of the rest of us. So I think compassion starts to come in as sort of the surrogate for autonomy. And I think compassion is not saying that someone has potentially a challenging medical condition and then saying you want to kill them.
Right.
That doesn't sound very compassionate to me.
Well, and as Pope John Paul II would have said, it was this idea of false compassion.
Yes.
Right. And, as you're talking about Omar or, any child with, any of us really, whether we have a genetic condition or not, I like to think of each of us as reflecting an image of God in a very special way. And if Omar is not here with us, the world loses that reflection of who God is, right? And so we need him here, just like we need you here, Dr. McCaffrey, and you here, Monica. It's important for people to see that. Go ahead.
Just one more thing, just talking about, the whole compassion thing. I think one of the things that, I'll be interested to hear what Monica thinks about this, but one of the things that we need to address, certainly as Catholics, is the current stand of the church on prenatal diagnosis. And if you look at the USCCB website, really, understandably, what it talks about is continuing a pregnancy with a child with a prenatal diagnosis. And then what it offers up next is perinatal hospice.
Yes. Okay.
And perinatal hospice, to me, might be appropriate for some conditions. But I think what's appropriate for any baby is to be stabilized and evaluated after they're born. And let's make sure we know what we're looking at and what we're dealing with. And then let's sit down and have a conversation with the family. If trisomy 13 or 18 survivals can be out to 50, 60% at a year now, perinatal hospice is expediting the death of a lot of babies.
Yes.
And it's not a whole lot different than infanticide.
Right. Well, and I've told you both, I believe, the call that I received from the Texas Medical Center not too long ago of a trisomy 13 baby who the alleged treatment, I'm making air quotes for our listeners, but in the NICU, the treatment being given to this baby in perinatal hospice was the withdrawal of food and water, which obviously is a huge no-no and a huge problem from a Catholic perspective and I think from a moral perspective. But it was in the name of compassion. It was in the name of this child isn't going to do well. This child isn't going to survive long term. So let's keep them comfortable. I hope the child was being kept moderately comfortable. But those are the realities, unfortunately, that we're seeing. And that is not appropriate care.
Yeah, I think, comfort care, perinatal hospice, and in the neonatal world, in the newborn world, palliative care. I mean, palliative care should mean something different. Palliative care should allow for treatment, but also recognizing that a patient has a difficult, challenging medical condition, maybe that might limit a life. So those things both need to be kept in perspective.
Right.
Hospice care gives up on curative treatment. It says that we're assuming there will be death.
Yes.
And we need to keep the patient comfortable. So what often gets conflated, mixed and matched in the newborn world is palliative care, comfort care, and perinatal hospice. And in a lot of places, they're really all the same thing. They're not really a whole lot different. Now, there are a few places, and it sounds like your neonatal situation was one where the palliative care people were really palliative care people. In my place, our complex care people are palliative care people and understand the spectrum here.
Yes.
But, most parents, what they're getting prenatally, they're not reflexly, for sure, being told that there might be a possibility of life for your baby. They're told that the likelihood is death. And we need to get away from being, certainly as Catholics dealing with this topic, but certainly as physicians, can we get to the point where we would presume there might be a life and we'll evaluate and look at the baby, not necessarily launch into, experimentation and those types of things.
Sure.
But evaluate what we're dealing with and then sit down with the parents and talk and say, someone like Omar, Omar didn't need a whole lot necessarily right after he was born.
No.
But if Omar had been in a different situation on a comfort palliative care route, what he would have gotten is no plan for feeding, narcotics, and just kept him warm. And narcotics, by the way, slow down your breathing. So,
right.
There might be people who use different doses of narcotics, but truly the literature on this, the only literature that exists is from Annie Janvier up in Montreal, talking to soft people, looking at prenatal and postnatal diagnosis for trisomy 13 and 18. And what she and her husband, Keith Barrington and Barb Farlow, Keith is a neonatologist as well. They're just unbelievable world-leading neos, came to the conclusion that palliative care with a prenatal diagnosis is geared towards expediting the death of the child.
Okay. Which is, of course, not the intention of especially Catholics that are pushing and promoting. It's all well-intentioned, but I think the reality is
in a lot of compassion and support and warmth, and we'll have your family, and
we're going to support you. And
but what about the possibility the baby could live? I mean,
yeah.
So I'm one of these people that has done this over the years. I think when perinatal hospice really started becoming super popular was in the mid-2000s.
Okay.
And at that time, everything was lethal. All of these kids were lethal. So fair enough. I mean, that's what everyone was operating from. But the fact is now that we know they can survive. So perinatal hospice should not be the go-to reflex pathway for parents who want to get to a live birth.
We need to move.
What they're really talking about at this point is saying, these are kids who are severely impaired. What are they going to contribute to society? They're just going to suffer. So let's just, based on that futility and their disability, let's push them into comfort care. And
you do hear that drain on our resources kind of.
Yes. I've been told that directly by people.
Yeah.
That's one of the reasons physicians will say that it's still okay that we do this.
Right.
Because they're a drain on resources. How many vaccines could we buy, Marty, with the money that we use to take care of these kids?
Sure. And that's just a terrible place to be. But, well,
I'm all for getting rid of Viagra for people.
Well, there you go. Okay, 49.
I couldn't resist.
That's
well,
great.
He did use sildenafil, so
right.
That's a different purpose.
Yeah, no.
So one of the best pieces of advice. One of the best pieces of advice I ever got was, in not in a prenatal diagnosis situation, but kind of in a trauma and a loss situation, right? Where a deacon told me I was feeling like I wasn't getting the response that I wanted from family and friends to my particular trauma and my particular loss. And as the grieving person, and when you have a prenatal diagnosis, there's certainly a grieving, there's a fear, there's all of those negative emotions that come on. And as I was telling this deacon, I said, people are not responding the way I need them to respond. And I don't know why that's so hard. And he gave me the best advice I've ever gotten. He said, sometimes when you're the grieving person, you expect people to know what to say. And you feel that you deserve that. And you do deserve that. But people don't know what to say. They really want to help you, but they don't know what to say. So you, as the grieving person, are in the position of having to tell your friends and family, this is what I need. It is helpful to me when you say X. It is not helpful to me at all when you say Y. Please call my child by their name. This is their name. Please offer me this or don't offer me that, or I need to be alone right now, or I really want to talk about this right now. And I thought that was so great because our friends and family, by and large, always exceptions, right? But they want to do what's right for us, but they have no idea. This doesn't happen every day. It happens a lot, but it doesn't happen in our families every day, right? So giving parents permission to say, this is what I need, this is the path I need you to follow, I think is also an important piece of being a volunteer with Be Not Afraid and being that team member for parents.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
One of the things that we did, I mentioned that we had a blessing for Omar. So we had our priest come and do a blessing. We invited our close family and friends. And when we sent out the invitation through snail mail,
Yes.
it was a save the date. We included a letter from my husband and I. We included a trisomy 13 fact sheet. And somehow I found a list of what to say and what not to say in these situations. So I photocopied that and included it. And in the letter, we did explain what was going on. We did explain, we really don't want to talk about it. How they could help us. We were hoping to be in the hospital, and, these are some of the expenses that we're going to have, if you want to help us with parking, of course, only if you'd like.
Right.
Another thing I did is I had my mom, she shared the news to all our family.
Yes.
I didn't want to be the one to do that.
You don't want to have to say it 20 times
exactly.
either.
Yeah. My husband was also, he was the spokesperson on his side of the family.
Okay, sure.
And on the, we even had our moms practice how to get to the hospital, where to park, because we didn't want any calls on that day.
Yes.
We just wanted to focus our attention on Omar.
No, that's really beautiful. That's really beautiful. Yeah. And again, we do have to educate the people around us, even though we really would love it if they just knew. But they don't, but they really appreciate when we are able to tell them those things.
Yeah, the other thing from the physician side too, I think that I hear from parents that they would prefer never hearing is talking about things as totally relating to the genetic diagnosis. Talk about my baby's medical conditions.
Yes.
How we deal with those. I mean, and don't constantly just refer, well, trisomy. And just
trisomy babies are this way.
Trisomy babies, trisomy 13 kids. No, my baby's name is Omar, and these are his medical conditions. How are we gonna approach them?
Right. So approaching that person really as a unique child of God, rather than a medical condition that we're dealing with.
I think the tendency has been definitely for physicians to put people who have a trisomy condition all in one bucket. Certainly trisomy 13 and 18 conditions.
Sure.
And even, to a degree, I mean, trisomy 21 is a little bit different now, but, it's not, necessarily as life-limiting. But boy, we still abort 85 to 90% of the babies with a prenatal diagnosis. So.
Right. And trisomy 21, of course, is Down syndrome.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So, Monica, you had an opportunity through the Jerome's Hope Ministry here in the Archdiocese to work with a mom of a baby. And the baby had Epstein's anomaly, which is a heart condition that I don't know a lot about. But tell us a little about that mom and that baby and how that went.
That was all divine intervention.
Oh, wonderful.
So yes, you called me and told me about this mom who had approached somebody at a church. Yeah. She was pregnant, but I guess, there was a mistake and she somehow got connected to Rachel's Vineyard.
Right, which is the post-abortion healing ministry, which we couldn't quite understand why a priest would send us because she was pregnant at the time.
And so eventually I got to speaking with her. She was sharing her story with me. she let me know that she was a doctor in her home country.
Yeah.
And she became pregnant, which, she was going to have to be a single mom, which she accepted.
Right.
But once she found out about the Epstein's anomaly, then she said, I really don't know how I'm going to do this.
Okay.
And so she was connected to me and to another doctor, a pediatrician, who, again, divine intervention.
Mm-hmm.
His best friend had that same anomaly and lived into his 60s.
Okay.
And so anyways, Carla and I were talking. We talked extensively. And she already had an appointment set up for an abortion.
Yeah.
And, I shared my story about Omar, and she said, I don't know, I didn't know that kids like Omar existed, because we are told that they don't.
Right.
And we talked, and one day I called her and she said, you know what? I'm not going to think any more bad things. I'm going to keep my baby. I'm going to have this baby.
Wow.
Right.
And she said, I see you, and I see, how far Omar has gotten because of your love, of your faith. I'm going to have my baby. And, this is coming from a mom who will be a single mom.
Yeah.
And very limited support. But
right.
Omar touched her heart. Omar saved a baby.
Yeah. And then her daughter was born.
She was born. She has had some heart surgeries.
Yeah.
But overall is doing well. And I don't think she has ever regretted her decision.
No, but that's such a beautiful story, and that was really just a pleasure to work with you. And then you texted me a picture of her daughter when she was born, and that was just such a happy day. So I still look back on that. Thank you so much for that. But
Holy Spirit is amazing.
Holy Spirit is amazing,
Amen.
And there's so much love, and what I hear when you are telling that story, just the importance of hope, and the hope that you gave to her of, what? Yeah, there's going to be challenges. In everybody's life, there's going to be challenges, but there's going to be hope, and we're going to walk with you. And that goes so far to making a difference. And so how do we, I think, as a medical community, yes, but also as a Catholic community, how do we step up and make sure that people know that they're loved and that they are supported, and that, yes, this is not the news that you were wanting to get, when you found out you were pregnant. But where are we going to go from here? And how are we going to be really those ambassadors of hope for you?
Yeah, I think for doctors, a doctor's role should never, ever be to destroy hope. But oftentimes that's what you see with these prenatal diagnoses. And it's not just, on the maternal side, but on the neonatal side, it happens quite a bit as well.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes it's hard enough for the mom to get through the pregnancy and fight through people who are very negative and cynical and pessimistic about her baby, and they won't be able to survive. And then the baby doesn't get the memo. But then oftentimes the fight has only just begun then. Because in the NICU or on the neonatal side, if you're determined to really try and fight for your child, you're going to run into some walls there in a lot of places, not every place, but in a lot of places. And, people who just think that for whatever reason, these are lives that are not necessarily worth living. And so, but I think the lesson is that these kids are amazing. Like Omar, the impact Omar has had on you, and your family. I mean, the impact Shay, who's very different, who's not nearly as involved as a baby or a child like Omar, but the impact that they have on your family and the ripples that come out from that are incredible. I mean, all along the way, things you'll never know. I hope, at Final Judgment, we'll get to see, little map up there with Omar and everything or Shay and everything that, these kids are amazing. And everybody is here with special purpose, I think, for sure. Yeah. God put us here. He needed us here. He wanted each one of us. But these people are I don't know. I think they're a little different. I I think they're here with very special purpose, and they're missionaries of love. I mean, that is their job. That is why they're here, and they know it. I think they know it.
That's really beautiful.
Much, yes.
I love that very much. Kind of final question for both of you, and Monica, I guess let's start with you. What is important for families to receive from their church communities, from their clergy, when receiving a prenatal diagnosis, or maybe after that baby is born? What support can our church communities be providing?
Just, I think, presence, the church's presence, the community's presence, and just, gathering together. Sometimes, back to what you were saying about sometimes people don't know what to do or say.
Right.
Asking, what can we do for your family?
Right.
I have a friend who told me that one day somebody from their church just showed up and mowed their yard.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Because, I mean, that's not one thing you're going to think of when you have a very medically complex child at home.
Sure.
Yeah.
I don't know. One of the things I did was I went to talk to the priest at our parish, and he was very supportive to us.
Mm-hmm.
He was going to be there at Omar's birth, but there was a retreat, and he said, it's okay, don't worry. We will all be praying for you, myself and all these other priests from around the country. But he did send the deacon.
Yes.
And so he was there at the birth and did the emergency baptism. So just having, maybe a familiar face that's able to be there, from your parish.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think just, and also, just opening up, smiling at that person when they come into the mass, that they're not, my son is going to make sounds and noises,
Yeah.
smile at him.
Absolutely.
They're not a distraction.
No. And I think so much too is, we kind of think of the birth as, okay, well, the baby was born and, that's great. The need for the church is over. And, really when you're raising a child that has a situation that's medically complex, that those needs are going to continue, and having that child, yes, it's wonderful and beautiful having that member of your family, but there are some added challenges. And so, not forgetting, that you're still needed as a community. We still need that wraparound support. We still need that lawn mowed. We still need that meal train to be coming, and all of those things. And so, remembering that, we don't stop being there for you because that baby has been born and has come home from the hospital. Right.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think everything Monica said. I mean, I can't say that any better. But yeah, I think to sort of what you said, Monica, sort of summarized for me is just to at least be welcoming. And not only to, talking with, your priest or your pastor prenatally, but afterwards, and then being welcomed in the church. Taking a little bit of extra time to think about the spiritual course of people, especially with severe disabilities, and in terms of growing in the church, the sacraments, those other things, which are really so important for all of us. I think the other thing the church should be thinking about doing, well, the church needs to educate itself on where prenatal diagnosis is, but I think in that respect, to build something education-wise about prenatal diagnosis into pre-Cana classes is really critical. I think people in the church, for sure, getting married need to understand what this is about as much as they do, natural family planning or anything else. Because they get pregnant, they will have to deal with this.
Sure.
It's going to be raised with them, and there's a lot of disinformation out there, or just people just aren't knowledgeable. So I think that for sure needs to happen. I think pastors, priests, it's hard for them to be current on all these, different ethical issues. It's just really not possible. But to recognize what you don't know, and then to at least look at the big picture and recognize that maybe we need some other resources. Like we need Be Not Afraid to be a group to deal with this front in the war on life, because we're not addressing this right now.
Right.
And to really just deputize people to work on that. So I think there needs to be a lot of education in the church right now. They need to catch up a little bit on what's going on and what young families, any family who's having a baby, is going through right now in terms of prenatal diagnosis.
No, and I love the idea as you're talking about that. One of the conversations that is a little bit different, but we're going through the infertility conversation, in the marriage prep, are we talking about what if you do experience infertility? Because IVF is such an issue right now, and people are often funneled into that. Another
front in the war on life.
Front in the war on life. So, but really this, I think that's a wonderful idea of talking about this and just having the conversation really whenever we can include it, because it's a hard topic for people to talk about. I think as people are getting married, that's not really where their head is. But we do need to be constantly reminding people that this is an issue that members of our community are struggling with. And how are we going to be there to support and to love and provide that hope?
Yep.
So, well, thank you both for your expertise and insight. It's been a pleasure to have both of you. For those that would like to learn more about supporting families after prenatal diagnosis, we'll include links to the Pro-Life Activities Office and to the Be Not Afraid National Organization with this podcast. Please continue to pray for all the families and the children and the medical and pastoral teams that care for them, that they may be always treated with love, true compassion, and support. Thanks for listening. We'll talk to you again soon here at Around the Archdiocese.
To learn more about the ministries and offices of the Archdiocese of Galveston-Houston, visit us online at archgh.org. That's archgh.org.